Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's going to be going over an update on the fleet sales world. Before we get in this video though, as always, if you're going to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And a lot of the information in today's video does come from Cox Automotive. Let's get into it. So the big headline figure is that fleet sales year over year, so from July of 22 to July of 23, have increased by 34.5%, and this represents a unit amount of over 170,000 units sold in a single month. And we are now officially almost at the levels we were at volume-wise prior to the pandemic. We're only 2% below what we were at in July of 2019. Now, 2019 was a very interesting year because 2019 was a year where retail sales had kind of slowed down, but fleet sales were at an all-time high. And so we're pretty much at the all-time of all-time highs at this point when it comes to fleet sales. So we might break some records at this point, which is just absolutely insane. Now, if we look at the individual categories, you've got commercial fleet sales. Those had a measly increase of 7.5%, but they do hold a lot of the fleet sale market share. So last year, 66,000 units. This year, 71,000 units. Now, government fleet sales increased by 27%, but that's a pretty small share of the fleet world. 17,000 units last year, 21,000 units this year. And then rental also holds a pretty big market share in the fleet world. 78.4% increase year over year. So from 43,000 units last year to over 78,000 units this year. And I mean, those rental sales, it doesn't look like they're slowing down anytime soon. And I can tell you anecdotally, I've had a lot of dealers tell me that rental car companies will do anything to get a hold of brand new cars. And so you actually have a lot of dealers that are basically selling these cars to these rental fleets, but they're doing it through the retail channels rather than through the fleet channels. I do want to kind of talk about that a little bit later at the end of the video. Now, if we compare this to the retail side of things, retail sales year over year up by just over 12%. So obviously they're not nearly as crazy as fleet sales, but they are still up. So retail sales are just over 13.2 million is our kind of year over year tracking at this point. And so, again, what this basically shows is that a lot of the increases that we're seeing in the new car market are because of fleet sales. Again, retail sales have definitely increased, but a lot of the new car market increases are because of fleet sales. And so now that'll kind of lead us into talking about what this means for the overall market. And it really just depends on what manufacturer you're looking at, because certain manufacturers benefit from fleet sales more than other manufacturers. A good example is the American brands, right? Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, especially General Motors and Stellantis, because those two manufacturers right now are actually feeding a lot of the fleet sales that we are currently seeing. So for these manufacturers that have the ability to sell into these fleets in large numbers, this obviously helps pad their overall numbers and helps them have kind of more of like a steady stream of income, if that makes sense. And so even if the retail sales basically dip towards the end of this year, those automakers will do a lot better. Now, the other automakers that obviously don't sell a lot into fleets, it's like this, it doesn't matter to them. It doesn't really do anything for them. So obviously it's going to be an automaker to automaker thing. But for the overall new car market, it's obviously going to make it look bigger, right? And so because the overall new car market is going to look bigger, this is going to disincentivize automakers to do any sort of major price cuts. Because again, look at it from an automaker perspective. If you have a limited supply of materials and labor, and you can build one vehicle that's a guaranteed sell, even though the profit margins with fleet vehicles are typically lower than retail pieces, if you have a guaranteed sell over here, whereas the other vehicle you might have sit on a dealer lot for a while, you're probably going to go with the guaranteed sale. And on top of that, the fleet companies are willing to pay the higher prices, which they are showing that they are more than happy to pay these higher prices. Then that means that it's going to lead to higher prices for the rest of us. Again, there's just no real reason for them to discount things. And then the last thing I'm going to comment on is, like I said earlier in the video, there are a lot of fleet vehicles being sold through retail channels. Again, these fleet companies are so hungry for vehicles that they, aren't able to always go through the, fleet channels to get the vehicles that they need. And so a lot of them are going into these dealerships and just buying these vehicles via retail. And so I do believe that the retail numbers are a little bit overinflated because, again, there are a lot of these vehicles that are being sold to fleets through the retail channels. So that means that that 12% increase, I think, this is just based on complete anecdotal evidence. I think part of that, a big part of that, maybe even like half of that year-over-year increase is from the fleet side of things going through those retail channels. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about this whole fleet situation, and do you think this is a good thing for the car market, or do you think this is a bad thing? And I guess from the perspective of a consumer. I'll see ya.